What is up, party people? I am your host, Naomi, and this is Mosaic in Progress. Welcome back to the podcast. I have missed you so much. I have missed being able to produce content for you. I have missed all of this, and I hope you have all been well. And I hope that you checked out some of my recommendations from the last episode, because they certainly make my life better, and I hope that they would make your life better as well. As promised, here is an explanation for why I have been away. So it's no big secret that banks and mortgage companies are basically big bullies. There are very few that actually do anything that serves the customer. They're all out to kind of make money for themselves, and they will fuck over anyone necessary to do that. And my husband and I found ourselves in one of those situations of getting fucked over. The house we were living in was in his parents' name. They have been deceased for a few years now. And the original mortgage company that had the loan was aware that they were deceased, and my husband was not in a position to be able to refinance or anything like that. So they were just allowing him to make payments with it still being in his parents' name until such time as he could change things over. Well, the mortgage got bought out by ShellPoint, and I will name that name because if you have a mortgage that is owned by ShellPoint, you should do everything within your power to get it over to another company. During this process, we found out that this was a normal practice for them. It was a normal way that they do business. So what happened was my husband found his father's will. He did not know his father had a will. He had never told him he had a will. We found it while going through some old papers. And he sent it to the mortgage company. He tried to get the house put in his name because the will left him the house. And they quit accepting payments from him because the house was not in his name. They said, we won't accept any more payments from you, even though they had been for the last over 6 years. And they jerked him around for 6 months and then sent him to foreclosure for non-payment. They kept saying, oh, we didn't get the paperwork. Oh, we couldn't read it. Oh, you sent it to the wrong person, even though he sent it to who they told him to send it to. And by the time it was at foreclosure, we went to a lawyer, and the lawyer said, you're not going to get anywhere with this if you try to sue them or take them to court over this. They have much better lawyers, much bigger lawyers. They are friends with judges and have connections and things like that. They will drag you through court for so long that it won't be worth it to you. You'll come out worse off for trying to take them to court. Best thing you can do is just sell the house at a loss, which is what we did, and so that before the auction date. So we sold the house at a pretty huge loss, and the conditions of closure were that we had like 2 months or something to get out of the house. We found another house, which turned out to be my dream house. It's a much better house, and we're all moving into it now, and I have my own special room for my witchcraft and podcast stuff, a little corner for my podcast, which I will post on my Instagram. So check it out. I got this awesome new chair that I found at a one of those little like flea market antique stores where they have like a bunch of booths people can have. Somebody made this chair. It's got mosaic trim on it. It's like, I have to have that for my podcast. If you're not on Instagram, it's got mosaic trim around it that she hand did, and the chair is covered in purple velvet. It's awesome. So since early November, I have been dealing with trying to get that house sold and then trying to find a new house and all of the process for going through a home loan. We went through it all in 4 months, which I think is pretty fast. I've never bought a house before, so I don't know. People were saying it was a pretty fast turnaround process. And it was absolutely insane. We were supposed to have movers to pack us up and move from our old house, and they got canceled. So we had to do it all ourselves, like expecting to have boxes and packing help. We had a week to pack everything up and get it moved out. And then we had piano movers who were supposed to come help us, and they fell through. And my friends just really came through for me, and I cannot express enough gratitude for all of the help that I received from very unexpected places. And one of my friends who did help me out, she said, if I had a tear for every time someone had helped me out, the entire world would be flooded. And I'm going to put that on a canvas or something and hang it in my house because it's my new favorite quote. I think things definitely turned out for the best. It was an impossibly stressful situation, but that house was unhealthy and toxic, both physically and emotionally, and we needed to get out of it. And I don't think that we would have if we hadn't been pushed out. And that has had me reflecting a lot on my own inner self and how I allow things to come into my life and my experience. I, for a long time, have been very deeply invested, I guess is the word I want to use. I work with the shadow a lot. I do a lot of shadow work. I work with death and death entities. That's kind of been my thing for a while. And when I worked in hospice for the brief time that I did, it kind of introduced this idea to me that death doesn't always have to be painful, that it doesn't always have to be so traumatic. It can just be a peaceful transition, because all death is a transition, whether it's a physical death or a spiritual death, an emotional death, whatever, as you die to who you are and become a new person, whatever that means. It doesn't always have to be painful. But in my mind, even not necessarily fully consciously, it's painful. And I cannot wrap my head around the fact that I could go through a major change and it be easy. And that's something that I've had to really confront in myself with this, because this could have been a lot easier, but I was not aligned with it being easier. In fact, even when I was trying to be in a more positive mindset after our movers got canceled, I said to my husband, this week is gonna suck, but we'll get through it. And I was trying to be more positive, but in being more positive, I was still embracing that idea and being wed to that idea that it has to be painful. It's gonna suck. It didn't have to suck, but because I wouldn't align with it being easier, it sucked. And I say I wouldn't align because I'm owning responsibility for my own vibration and my own responsibility in the suckage of my life. And taking responsibility for your life and the things that suck about it is a very difficult thing, especially because so often we think of blame and responsibility as the same thing. Blaming yourself is not taking responsibility, and vice versa. And we think of blame when we think of responsibility. It's your fault, it's your fault, it's their fault, it's whoever's fault, it's whatever's fault, it's the circumstance's fault. Placing blame or assigning fault and taking responsibility are two different things, and they are so similar. Our brains have a really hard time separating the two, but it's not the same thing. And this is something that I'm really in the process of learning and implementing and alchemizing into my present reality, is that I can be responsible for something and not be at fault. And it does sound like a contradiction when you're first learning this and implementing it. But I don't have to be to blame to take responsibility. And you can think of it kind of like, think of a child that's not yours, somebody else's child. And this child is being neglected or abused or whatever. It's not your fault that that's happening. You're not to blame for it happening, but you have a responsibility to the situation if you know about it. It's kind of like that. That's sort of a stretch. But that was a way that I was able to kind of wrap my head around it. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around it fully because it's such a foreign concept to me. Because for my entire life, blame and responsibility, fault and responsibility have been the same thing. And coming to that understanding that they're not is extremely foreign to me. Like, it is not my fault that I was abused. I'm not to blame for my parents' abuse, but I do have a responsibility in that situation. And I did have a responsibility even as a child, though I didn't understand it, of what I'm going to do with that situation. And I can look at that and see where my responsibility is and was and not place blame. I don't have to say it is 7-year-old me's fault for what I went through in order to say 7-year-old me had a responsibility in that situation. And me now has a responsibility to 7-year-old me and to myself now in relation to that situation. And I can look at the situation with the house and I can see where the responsibility lies or lay with myself and with my husband, and also not blame us for what happened, because you can't change what other people do. All you can do is respond to it. And we were put in a really awful situation that probably could have been better if we had changed how we responded to it. Now, and I can look at that in non-judgment and not blame him or blame myself or hold any kind of grudge against either one of us for what we did or didn't do, but also with the knowledge that going forward, I can do better. I can change how I respond to a situation. I don't have to believe that a bad circumstance means a bad life, means a sudden cascade of bad events. I do not have to believe that. I have believed in the law of attraction for a really long time now, and I understand how it works, though my life doesn't always reflect that. I can change how I respond so that something bad doesn't equal the beginning of misery. It doesn't have to mean suddenly everything sucks. And it did in this situation. But through it, I grew and I learned. And even though I was not practicing what I'm speaking to you right now, I was learning it through the process. And for that, I am grateful for that circumstance, because I learned to be calm and okay when everything around me was not calm and okay. And I'm not saying that I was just a perfect angel through the whole thing, because I had so many breakdowns and so many meltdowns. And for a solid month, I was having multiple panic attacks a day. I literally thought that I might die because I was having so many panic attacks, and I was just physically ill, and I couldn't eat and I couldn't sleep, and I wasn't sure we were going to make it through. It was literally my worst nightmare, just being played out in front of me every single day, losing my home. Not having a home is a pretty big trigger for me. And that's not to say that I'm unique in that, because if you listen to my episode, I can't remember if it was the first episode or it was near the beginning of the podcast, on chakras and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, safety and belonging are our most basic human needs. We need to know that we're safe. We need to know that we have belonging to a group or to a place. And not having that, it shakes us to our core, because everything else builds on that. So if you don't have security, if you don't have safety, if you don't feel like you belong, nothing else really matters, because there's nothing to build on from there. If you don't have your most basic needs met, the entire rest of your life is just chaotic, because there's nothing to build on. There's no foundation. There's no roots. For me specifically, I grew up in an environment where I was never sure of my home, and I was never sure of my belonging. I never felt like I fit in with my family. I always felt like the black sheep, the outcast. Even when I was a very, very young child, I felt like I didn't fit in with them, that I didn't belong to them. I wasn't wanted. I always felt like I wasn't really wanted for me, for who I was. Like, they wanted me as a concept, but not me, who I really was as a person. In addition to that, and this is nothing against renting or people who do rent. I have a lot of strong feelings about landlords and people who buy up property, but that's a topic for another episode. We rented for most of my life, and while that's not something a child should really have any concept of or concern about, my parents certainly brought it into our awareness to where it became something that I worried about, because it was, oh, well, we have to do such and such and such and such, or the landlord might kick us out. Oh, we can't do this because we might get in trouble with the landlord. There was a lot of awareness of financial issues that really I was too young to be carrying the burden for. And I think my parents really struggled with knowing what to tell their children, as far as what's too much information and what's enough information for them to be able to mature and understand things. And there was a lot of things that I had to take on that were way too advanced for my young age. But in addition to that, there was always this understanding that if we weren't well behaved enough or good enough, that our parents might get rid of us. And I am not just talking about the fact that we were literally threatened with death if we were not godly enough or obedient enough. They threatened to send us to public school, and that was made out to be like prison, basically, sending us into the devil's prison, essentially. That we were going to be treated horribly, and people were going to try to get us to reject God. And it was held over our heads as like this punishment that was an option if we weren't obedient enough. And even there were threats of just kicking us out. When we were younger, it was giving us over to the state, that they threatened to give us up for adoption. And then when we were older, it was, you'll have to figure out your own way, with no financial help. And even before we had jobs, because we were discouraged from making our own money as teenagers and young adults. And so it was always this thing where I was just really scared of not having a home. And I never felt like I had a home. I never felt like there was anywhere that I really belonged, that was mine, that I was safe. And even when I moved in with my husband, and this one's kind of hard for me to talk about, because the house wasn't even in his name, certainly didn't have my name on it, and there were issues with his ex-wife and family who tried to say that I had no right to be there and I had no legal leg to stand on. We weren't legally married and it wasn't legally our house as far as paperwork went. And the last little more than a week, I guess it's been 2 weeks since we closed on our house. And my name is listed first. And it's been about 4 weeks, not quite a month, since we were legally married. And having that security and that social standing, safety, security with legally being married to him, I did not anticipate the peace that it would give me. It's something that I've always looked forward to. It's something that I've always wanted. But it's been a lot for me to grapple with that suddenly I'm not scared anymore. And when you've been scared your whole life and then suddenly you're not, it feels like somebody cut your arm off. And that's a really weird thing to adjust to your fear being a part of you, to accepting that and acknowledging that your fear was such a part of you that not having it anymore feels like something's wrong. And don't get me wrong, I am very happy to not have that fear anymore, and I'm very happy to have that safety and security. And I am very aware that there's a lot of misogyny wrapped up in feeling secure for having a piece of paper that says I'm his wife. And I am very aware of the capitalist bullshit that goes along with feeling secure because I have a house with my name on it. But this is the society we live in. We live in a patriarchal, misogynistic, capitalist society. And it doesn't matter how much I dislike that, it's the reality of where I live. And so having those sort of safety measures in place for myself that I didn't have before has led to a level of peace that I didn't know was possible for me to have. That I'm not scared someone's going to fight me for a house. I'm not scared that someone is going to argue that I'm not really my husband's wife. I have paperwork that will hold up in court that says I am who I say I am, and this is my house. And what's been even more difficult to deal with is that my executive dysfunction that I have struggled with my entire life has just about disappeared. I don't feel any fear about doing or not doing things in this house. And because there's no fear associated with action or inaction, I have accomplished so much that I normally would struggle with. And even when I had my slow days and I rested a lot, I still accomplished more than I normally would have, and I didn't feel guilty for resting. And I know part of that is because of the work that I've been doing. I'm taking an online course that's through someone local. It's called Relationship Alchemy, and the title is a bit deceiving. It's a sort of shadow work, self-healing, forgiveness of your past and trauma kind of course. And I've been listening to Abraham Hicks meditations daily and usually multiple times a day, and my mindset has shifted significantly to the point where I'm just much more accepting of the current state and the current reality. And there's a part of me that's like, are you accepting of it because you're fine now? Or are you accepting of it because you got okay with being fine? And I think there's a part of me that is accepting because I'm fine now. But I also know that I was working on it before I was fine. When I was in the middle of foreclosure and not knowing if I was going to have anywhere to live and wondering if I was going to have to rehome my cats and my dogs and if I was going to end up living out of my car, I was still working then on being okay. And even on the days that I wasn't okay, I was working on being okay. There were so many mornings just crying and praying and talking myself into a better mood. I got really good at doing the rampage things like Abraham Hicks does. Just doing my own and getting myself into a state of being okay even when I wasn't okay. Which I truly think is why I am where I am right now, because that's the whole basis of everything that is taught in the Abraham Hicks meditations and classes and things. You get into an emotional state of where you want to be before you're in a physical state of where you want to be. And because I worked on getting myself into an emotional state of being okay, even though my surroundings did not reflect that, I am now in the physical state of being okay. And it's a really hard thing to master, and it's a really hard thing not to sabotage, because I'm looking around and I'm like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, what if I fuck it up? What if I fuck it up? And I've heard on some of the things that I've listened to, she'll talk to people and she'll tell them, the way that you don't fuck it up is by not thinking about fucking it up. Just be happy. Just be happy. Just be grateful. And as someone who grew up with horrific childhood trauma and never knowing if I was okay or what the next horrible thing was going to be, peace feels suspicious. It's like, okay, when are things about to get bad? Because that's what always happened. Okay, things are really good now. It's about to get really bad. And that was my entire reality for almost 30 years of my life. When things felt really good, it was the predecessor of things being really bad. Always. 100% of the time, without exception. And when you get into that pattern, when you get used to that pattern, it's so hard to get out of it mentally. And it's so hard to not sabotage yourself. But I can do it. I believe I can do it. And I believe you can too. If you're in that same boat of sabotaging yourself because you don't know how to be okay, you deserve to be okay. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be protected. You deserve to be secure. You deserve to have belonging. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be just the calm before the storm. Sometimes it's just good weather. And it's okay to let it just be good weather. And life has its ebbs and flows. It's also okay for it to storm. Because you can be okay in the storm too. Sometimes a storm just blows through. It doesn't mean that it destroys your house. Doesn't mean you have to buy a new roof. Doesn't mean a tree falls on your car or on your bedroom or whatever. Sometimes it can just storm. And you stay inside your home and you watch it and you say, wow, pretty scary out here, but I'm safe. I have a roof over my head, and it's a strong roof, and it's a sturdy roof, and it's protecting me. And then in a few hours, the storm is gone, and you're still okay. The storm doesn't always have to get inside. And I guess that's what I want to leave you with, is that the storm doesn't always have to get inside. Storms are inevitable, but they don't always have to get inside. And you don't always have to be anticipating the storm. You can let the sun just shine on your face, and you can smile, and you can enjoy it. And you don't have to be watching for the clouds. You can close your eyes. You can bask in it. You can be safe. You can let go. I have missed you all in this so much. So happy to be back. I'm recording this on my phone as I usually do. But very soon I'm going to get this very fancy microphone set up my husband got me. All set up, and hopefully that will improve the audio quality of these podcasts. And I'm going to work on some editing software and maybe adding in some music and stuff. So very exciting new things coming for the podcast. And I will see you all next week. I hope you will tune in and join me as we both continue to work on our Mosaic in Progress.